At this point, you may already have a question for me. Like, all right, so you repeatedly stated that the 3PL knowledge by itself is not good enough to cover the project logistic planning for the upstream sector at the owners and operators. Well, tell me why or how that you don't believe the 3PL knowledge by itself is good enough. Well, here's one example by experience. This was a project at one of the biggest owner operators, where 18 projects collected together for a break bulk COA, contract of affreightment. If this job is done by a regular 3PL, the general notion typically is you want to find the service that has the shortest transit time, the most frequency, at the lowest possible freight rate. And that's pretty common, as it does make sense if you're a 2PL or 3PL. Actually, the shipper for 2PL. And a lot of 1PL actually have that concept, over years of experiences. If you work for a, let's say, manufacturing company or a trade house, and you're a in-house traffic manager, logistic manager, as they're called today, that's typically what you would be looking for. Well, guess what? If you're a project manager, you may have actually different notion, and it actually makes a lot of sense, but you would not know unless you have been working on projects within the owners and operators at the oil, gas, and chemical industry. And here is a perfect example for that. On a project that's not a capital project, meaning it's less than $1 billion contract value, there's this project construction site in Canada. All the construction sites always have the problem of crunchy spaces, and this one is actually in particular having even more serious problem of the space that they don't have. Well, on one hand, the project management already looking at the capital equipment procurement contract, which basically allowed the fabricator to supply the equipment at the ship dates that they could accept. The fabricators, they don't have the on-site storage space, and they do not want to accept a ship date that is basically out of their ERP planning, because the only available slot in their ERP for the master planning of production basically set the ship date of the particular equipment about 18 months ahead of the project commencement date as scheduled. And the project manager, very experienced one too, in this case, asked the project logistician to find out about the available freight service between the load port near the fabricator and discharging port near the construction site was, be ready for this, was the 1 year transit time. So the project logistician asked the project manager, so why would you want that? Well, tell you the truth, I don't have the available storage space at or near the fabricator, nor do I have any space for storage on the construction site until it's ready for the laydown and immediately to begin the master plan for the erection and installations. So basically, this long transit on the water becomes the free storage, and it's not really about the money to save over the storage or staging. It's one, you avoided the unnecessary handling between the movement, the carriage, and the storage slash staging. So that sounded very smart to the project logistician. And this would not be a knowledge commonly available to most of the 3PLs. So what was learned here is that sometimes when it's commonly perceived as the disadvantage of certain carriers who offer, around the globe sail route and all this extensive port of calls, and nevertheless make their transit time painfully long otherwise, actually became favorable in certain cases. So now we're back at the COA for the 18 projects. So about 20 carriers were invited to send in their service proposals, and all of them, after the careful analyses, none of them really compete against each other. When you go into the good subcategories, every single one of them have their advantage and disadvantage. But that could change, depends on the project management at the specific time and the specific place. Sometimes, because the capital equipment procurement contract stipulated ship dates, you may need the shortest transit time, and other time you might need the longest transit time. And the service frequencies actually means a lot, because what if the ship date gets quote unquote updated, and then whatever you booked, you're going to have to roll over to the next available sailing, and that's where the service frequency comes in. And then we're looking at the service route, because not all carriers service in the same area between the same ports. So the sailing route will be different, which differentiate between the different carriers. Now, even on the same sailing route, you will have the different type of tonnages or ships of different deck arrangement and the cranes, the lifting capacities. Some are heavier than others. At a certain area, you will not have the available shore cranes, not even float cranes of particular capacity when it reaches too heavy. Nevertheless, the crane capacity or the lifting capacity of the ships you would need becomes a very particularly important criteria. When you look at all that, you will come to the conclusion that you can actually treat all these 20 carriers in the different subcategories, and they might just serve different purposes, particularly needed by certain project management given the certain situations and conditions. So the COA actually concluded with all the 20 carriers, except for they're good for different requirement at different times to different project management.